Oops, I knocked over your wedding cake. Guess you'll have to get another one, my sister said, smiling. After I refused to fully fund her Hawaii trip with her new boyfriend, my mom said, "Don't be selfish." I let it go. That night, I candled her all-inclusive booking and did that. After which, the next morning, she was desperately knocking on my door and shouted. I knew my sister would try something the moment she realized I wasn't going to hand over thousands of dollars for her Hawaii trip. But I didn't expect her to strike in the middle of my own wedding reception, in front of nearly 100 guests, with a $2,700 cake as her weapon. The first hint came 3 weeks before the wedding. She called me while I was at work, bubbling over with excitement about this once-in-a-lifetime vacation she was planning with her new boyfriend, a guy who had managed, on our first meeting, to ask me how much I made before he even asked what I did for a living. She described everything in detail. The flights, the luxury resort, the dolphin swim excursion, the helicopter tour over volcanoes. I listened, thinking she was just sharing news. Then she said it, as if it were a perfectly reasonable arrangement. I'd be covering most of the costs, not lending, not splitting, paying for it outright. I told her flat out I could give her something toward it, but I wasn't footing the entire bill. There was a pause. Then she said she'd think about it and hung up. I remember feeling a bit uneasy after that call, but with the wedding approaching, I didn't give it too much thought. Big mistake. The wedding day started perfectly. The ceremony was smooth, the speeches heartfelt, and the weather was just right. Even my sister seemed unusually warm, making jokes with my friends and laughing with relatives she usually avoided. It was a little too perfect, but I told myself not to be paranoid. When the time came for the cake cutting, the music lowered, and guests began gathering near the table to watch. That cake was more than dessert to us. It had been designed by a bakery my wife adored, flown in at extra cost, layered with flavors we chosen together. 3 tiers of intricate detail, the kind of thing you take pictures of before you even think about eating. I noticed my sister standing unusually close to it, grinning at me across the room. She rested her hand on the edge of the table, almost as if she was steadying it. And then, with this deliberate little flick, the entire cake toppled forward. It landed with a wet, heavy thud on the floor. The top tier rolled, leaving streaks of icing across the carpet. The whole room froze. You could hear forks being quietly set down, chairs creaking. No one wanted to openly gasp or react, but I could feel the discomfort radiating off everyone. A few guests exchanged quick glances, but most just kept their faces neutral, as if pretending nothing had happened. My sister looked right at me, and still smiling, said she'd accidentally knocked it over. Then, almost cheerfully, she told me I'd have to order another one, as if a $2,700 custom cake could be replaced like a grocery store cupcake. Before I could respond, my mom stepped in. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't look shocked. She just looked at me and said, "Don't be selfish." In that instant, something clicked in my head. The embarrassment, the cost, the deliberate nature of what she'd done, it all boiled down to one thing. This was her revenge for me not paying for her trip, and my mother was fine with it. And that was the moment I decided this would be the last time she humiliated me or took advantage of me. That night, after the reception had finally wound down and the last guest had drifted out, I sat in the corner of our hotel suite, still in my shirt and tie, staring at my phone. My wife had collapsed onto the bed, the layers of her dress pulled around her like she just stepped out of a battle. She was asleep within minutes, but my mind wouldn't let me rest. The humiliation from earlier kept replaying in perfect detail. The frosting-smeared carpet. The way people's eyes flicked away from me as if they didn't want to be caught witnessing it. My mother stepping in to scold me instead of her. It wasn't just the cake. It was the message. You don't do what we want. We'll make sure you regret it. And they thought I'd swallow it. Smile. And move on. I wasn't angry in the kind of way that makes you shout or slam doors. I was quiet, angry. The kind where your thoughts sharpen, where you start looking for pressure points. and my sister had a big one. Months earlier, when she was trying to book this Hawaii trip, she'd insisted I set up the booking for her under my travel account. She claimed it was because I have better credit and could get the deals. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I'd handled family bookings before, but that also meant every reservation, every payment, every cancellation control was under my name. I opened the travel app and pulled up her itinerary. First-class flights for 2, 7 nights in a resort with a private balcony facing the ocean. Prepaid tours, helicopter ride over volcanoes, catamaran dinner cruise, private waterfall hike. The total, just over $9,000. It was all there, and it was all mine to control. The urge to hit cancel immediately was almost unbearable, but I knew she was unpredictable enough to try salvaging it if she found out right away. The longer I waited, the less chance she'd have. Airlines and resorts can be reversed if you catch them fast enough. I wanted to make sure that window was gone. So, I waited. I sat there in the dark, scrolling through the pictures of the resort she'd been sending to our family group chat for weeks, hearing her smug voice in my head as she described the champagne service and VIP treatment. I thought about how she must have pictured herself lounging there with that guy she barely knew, sending me photos just to rub it in. At 2:47 a.m., I finally moved. I took my laptop into the bathroom, shut the doors so the light wouldn't wake my wife, and started dismantling the trip piece by piece. Flights canceled, with a confirmation email sent to me. Resort canceled. Full refund process back to my card. Excursions wiped out. The dolphin swim, the helicopter, the dinner cruise, all gone. It took less than 20 minutes to erase her entire dream vacation. Then I went further. I changed the login credentials to the account. If she tried to get back in, she'd be locked out. The only proof her trip had ever existed would be the screenshots she'd already sent to friends, and those wouldn't get her anywhere. When I closed the laptop, I didn't feel guilt. I felt a stillness, like a clock had stopped ticking. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one playing defense. I crawled back into bed, the faint sound of the city outside the window, and fell asleep faster than I thought I would. The first sound I heard that morning wasn't an alarm. It was my phone buzzing, in short, frantic bursts. At first, I ignored it, letting it vibrate against the nightstand while I stayed half buried in the pillows. But it didn't stop. When I finally reached over and checked, the screen was lit up with missed calls. 11 from my sister, 4 from my mother, 2 from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't need to guess who that was. Her boyfriend probably thought he could negotiate with me like it was some kind of business deal. I set the phone face down and just listened. The hotel room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and my wife's breathing. She didn't ask about the calls. She didn't need to. She'd been there last night when my sister reduced the $2,700 wedding cake to a pile of crumbs and smeared frosting. She knew exactly what this was about. Then came the pounding. Not timid knocks. Full force hits against the hotel door, hard enough to rattle the latch. A moment later, her voice cut through the hallway. "Fix it. I know you canceled it. You can't do this to us." I sat there for a moment, letting the words hang in the air. The us almost made me laugh. She barely known this guy for a few months, but suddenly they were a united front when it came to my money. I opened the door just enough to see her. She was in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, hair pulled back in a way that looked more like she'd given up than gotten ready. She held her phone out toward me, the airline's cancellation notice glaring in red letters. Her boyfriend leaned against the wall behind her, not making eye contact, pretending to scroll through his own phone like this was none of his concern. She launched straight into her script. The flights were gone. The resort said the room had been released. The excursions were non-refundable now. She said it all like I'd made some clerical error and just needed to undo it before the system finalized. I didn't respond. I just sipped the coffee I'd poured a minute earlier and let her keep talking until her words started to trip over each other. That's when my mother appeared at the end of the hallway, moving fast. She didn't look confused. She looked ready to scold. She got close enough to point a finger at me before she even opened her mouth. This is going too far, James. You don't punish family over petty things. Petty. I almost laughed out loud. That's what she was calling it. Smashing a $2,700 cake in front of nearly 100 guests, forcing them to stand there in awkward silence, pretending they hadn't just seen the bride and groom's centerpiece destroyed like a prop in some bad prank. I stepped out into the hall, coffee still in hand, and told them both exactly how it was going to be. No more trips on my dime. No more emergencies that somehow required me to pull out my wallet. No more humiliation disguised as jokes. That part of my life was over. My sister's eyes filled, but it wasn't remorse. It was the rage of someone who'd realized the free ride had just ended. She tried one more tactic, offering to make it up to me if I restored the booking. I told her it was impossible. The trip was gone, and this time, so was my patience. The hallway outside our hotel room went quiet after I closed the door, but I knew my sister hadn't suddenly decided to see reason. She never retreated without trying another angle. I poured myself a second coffee and sat by the window, watching the street below while my wife read quietly. It didn't take long. About an hour later, my phone started buzzing again. Not with calls this time, but with messages from numbers I hadn't seen in months. James, what's this I hear about you canceling your sister's vacation? Your mom says she's devastated. Is this really about a cake? Can't you just be the bigger person? I didn't have to guess where they were getting their information. My sister had moved fast, spreading her version of the story before I even had a chance to breathe. In her telling, I'd apparently gone out of my way to ruin her once-in-a-lifetime trip just to spite her. No mention of the $2,700 wedding cake lying in pieces on the floor. No mention of the months of entitlement or of her expecting me to hand over thousands without hesitation. By lunchtime, it seemed like the entire extended family had picked a side. Some were politely avoiding the topic. Others were bluntly telling me I'd gone too far. A few cousins I barely spoke to sent one-line texts saying things like, "Not cool," or "wow." I ignored them all, but the unexpected hit later that afternoon. One of my groomsmen, Kyle, texted me a blurry photo. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. Then I saw my sister and her boyfriend standing in the middle of the departure hall at the airport, holding a giant cardboard sign with thick black letters. "Help! We're stranded." Kyle was there catching a flight for work. He'd overheard them telling anyone who would listen that their vacation had been sabotaged by a vindictive family member who had control over their funds. They were claiming they'd been left with nothing, and were hoping sympathetic travelers might either give them money or post their story online. And people did post it. Within an hour, a photo of them with their sign was on a local travel page. At first, the comments were sympathetic. Then someone recognized my sister. A guest from my wedding had uploaded a short video the night before. A shaky clip of the moment my sister knocked over the cake, laughing and telling me to order a new one. It wasn't meant to go viral, but once people connected that the woman in the airport was the same woman from the cake video, the sympathy evaporated. The tone of the comments changed fast. Why are they relying on family to fund their vacation? She's a grown adult. Buy your own tickets. This is the same girl who ruined her brother's wedding cake. Yeah, no wonder he canceled. Then someone dug up an older Facebook post where she bragged about never paying for trips because family always comes through. Screenshots spread like wildfire. By the end of the night, the airport photo had been taken down, but it was too late. It had already been shared thousands of times. When I woke up the next morning, my phone wasn't full of relatives telling me to fix things. It was full of messages from the same people saying maybe they'd been wrong. Maybe they hadn't heard the full story. Some just sent one word: wow. By the next morning, the energy from my family was completely different. The same people who, less than 24 hours ago, were telling me I was cruel or overreacting now had nothing to say. No more texts demanding I fix this. No more voicemails trying to guilt me into sending her money. The silence told me they'd seen the video. Nobody came out and said, "We were wrong about you." But their tone had shifted. A couple of aunts sent awkward messages like, well, there's always two sides to a story, which was their way of admitting that the side they heard first wasn't the truth. Others didn't message at all, which, for my family, meant they were hoping to quietly pretend they hadn't jumped to conclusions. 2 days passed before my sister reached out. When she finally did, it wasn't to apologize. It was to talk things through and move forward, which was her way of saying she wanted me to do something about the mess she'd created for herself online. I told her flatly that I hadn't posted the video, but even if I had, I wouldn't take it down. I reminded her that I didn't humiliate her in front of 100 people. She did that to me. I didn't make her demand thousands for a vacation she couldn't afford. She chose that. She got quiet, and for once she didn't have a comeback. That was the last time we spoke for months. My mother made one attempt to smooth things over. She called, her voice soft, telling me that family is all we have, and that holding grudges isn't healthy. I told her this wasn't a grudge. It was boundaries. A grudge means you sit in the past waiting for revenge. Boundaries mean you make sure the past doesn't repeat itself. The fallout for my sister didn't stop at the canceled Hawaii trip. A couple of her friends, the ones who lived for tagging themselves in her vacation photos, started avoiding her entirely. She went from constantly posting about being VIP everywhere to locking her accounts and going radio silent. The boyfriend didn't last much longer after that either. From what I heard, they broke up within a month. And me, I noticed something within weeks. The calls for help disappeared. No more last-minute emergencies that somehow always required me to pull out my credit card. No more guilt trips about how you're the only one in the family who can help. The moment I stopped giving, the demands evaporated. I realized I'd been feeding the problem for years without knowing it. And by cutting her trip off, I'd cut off something much bigger. The idea that I would always be there to clean up her messes. And that, more than the trip, more than the video, was the real win. The first update. It had been months since the wedding, and the silence from my sister had been almost eerie. No texts, no late-night calls, no half-hearted holiday greetings sent out of obligation. If it weren't for my mother occasionally mentioning her in passing, I could have convinced myself she didn't exist. Life had settled into something I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. Calm. The constant tension of waiting for the next emergency phone call was gone. My credit card statements stopped carrying mystery charges I'd agreed to. Just this once, the quiet was addictive. Even the family drama had cooled. The relatives who had been so quick to take sides after the cake incident had either gone silent or shifted into neutral territory. Nobody brought it up at gatherings. The video had long since been buried under the internet's endless appetite for new scandals. I thought that part of my life was over. Then, one Tuesday morning, it happened. I was going through my emails before work, deleting the usual spam when I saw it. A subject line from the same travel company I'd used to book and later cancel her Hawaii trip. At first, I assumed it was a promotion. They'd been sending me special offers for months. But this one wasn't generic. It had my name in the header, and the word confirmation. When I opened it, my stomach tightened. It wasn't my trip. It was hers. The details were all there. A week-long, all-inclusive Caribbean getaway. 2 passengers, ocean view suite, prepaid excursions, departing in just under 2 weeks, and the payment charged directly to my credit card. I sat back, staring at the screen, replaying the thought I'd had months ago. I had locked that account. I changed the password. The security questions. Everything. How she'd gotten back in, I didn't know. But it was clear she hadn't learned a single thing from last time. Same playbook. Different boyfriend, different destination, and still expecting me to foot the bill without so much as asking. I felt the same cold burn I'd felt on my wedding night, when she knocked over the $2,700 cake. But this time, I didn't act on impulse. I didn't smash the cancel button because I realized something. The first time I canceled her trip, it had been about reclaiming control. This time, it could be about something bigger. I checked the booking details again. Everything was paid for. All the confirmation numbers were valid. They were going to the Caribbean in exactly 13 days. An idea began forming, something that would leave a longer-lasting mark than just pulling the rug out from under her at the last minute. I could cancel it, yes, or I could let it play out just far enough that the fall would be much harder. I closed the laptop without making a move. The thought made me smile, not out of malice, but because I knew she still thought she was untouchable. That belief was about to end. I'm not going to say what I'm planning yet. Not here. Not until it's over. But when it happens, I'll write an update. And if it works the way I think it will, she'll never try something like this again. Second update. It's been just over a month since I wrote about the surprise Caribbean vacation my sister somehow managed to put on my credit card. I said I'd write an update when it was over. Well, it's over, and it's better than I imagined. When I first saw the booking confirmation, my first thought was to cancel it instantly like I did with her Hawaii trip. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had a rare opportunity. Canceling would sting, but it would be predictable. She'd just run to the family again, cry about how I ruined her life, and maybe try to spin it into sympathy. No, this time, I wanted her to walk all the way to the edge before she realized the ground was gone. So, I waited. I didn't say a word to her or to my mother. For 12 days, I let her think she'd pulled it off. I imagined she was already picturing herself sipping overpriced cocktails on a beach, posting grateful vibes selfies for Instagram. Meanwhile, I got to work. First, I called the resort. I confirmed the booking under my payment, then told them I wanted to change the guest names. The front desk didn't care. As long as it was paid in full, they'd swap the names without question. Same with the prepaid excursions, the catamaran sunset cruise, the snorkeling tour, the couple's spa package. All I had to do was email over ID for the new guests. And who were the new guests? Jack and Marlene. They're a retired couple who live a few houses down from me. They've always been kind, the kind of neighbors who will watch your place when you travel and wave from their porch when you get home. Years ago, Jack told me they never been able to afford the type of vacation they dreamed about. So, when this fell into my lap, I decided they were the perfect candidates. When I told them they were going to the Caribbean, all expenses paid, ocean view suite, full excursions, Marlene cried. Jack laughed for a full minute, thinking I was joking until I handed him the printed confirmation. The only thing left was the flights. I left those untouched until the night before departure. Then I canceled them and took the refund. By then, Jack and Marlene had already booked their own tickets with frequent flyer miles. The timing was perfect. The morning of what my sister thought was her flight, she called me at 6:42 a.m. The first call went unanswered. So did the second, third, and fourth. Then came the texts. The tickets are gone. The airline says, "You candled." The hotel says we're not on the list. What's going on? Call me right now. I didn't answer. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a photo from Marlene. She and Jack were standing on their suite balcony, holding tropical drinks, the Caribbean sunset blazing behind them. The caption read, "Best trip of our lives. Thank you, James." I printed the photo and had it framed. It's now on the bookshelf in my living room, where I see it every day. The fallout was predictable. My sister tried to rally the family against me again. But this time, nobody took the bait. Too many people still remembered the wedding cake video. Too many had watched her humiliate me in front of nearly 100 guests. Some even told her to her face that she had it coming. Her boyfriend didn't stick around either. From what I heard, he bailed less than 2 weeks after the airport disaster. I can only imagine how that breakup conversation went. And my mother? She hasn't brought up the trip once. She's civil when we talk, but I can tell she knows the game has changed. It's been quiet since. No more surprise charges. No more guilt trips. No more being the family safety net. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel guilty about it. I think the most satisfying part isn't that I took the trip from her. It's that I gave it to someone who appreciated it. She can stew in her entitlement all she wants. Meanwhile, Jack and Marlene have memories they'll talk about for the rest of their lives. And that's how this chapter ends, completely. At least until she tries again. And if she does, I'll be ready. And that's how this chapter ends. Completely. At least until she tries again. And if she does, I'll be ready. Funny thing is, since that trip, I've started hearing from other relatives in a different tone. Not the "can you help us out" tone, but the "how are you doing" tone. I think they're testing the waters, figuring out if I'm really done being the one they can lean on. The answer is yes. Jack and Marlene have stopped by twice since they got back. Both times with souvenirs. A carved wooden turtle and a bottle of rum so strong it could strip paint. They tell me stories about the trip, laughing so hard they cry. And every time I hear them, I feel more certain I made the right call. My sister hasn't spoken to me in person since the morning of the missing tickets. And honestly, I'm fine with that. If silence is the price of peace, I'll pay it every time.